stop. Just stop for a second and listen to that noise in your head. You know the one. You're in a room, maybe it's a boardroom, maybe it's a kitchen, or maybe you're just staring at a screen and someone says something that hits you right in the ego. Your heart starts that pathetic little race in your chest. You can feel the heat crawling up your neck, and your brain, that ancient, desperate machine, starts firing off comebacks like a malfunctioning Gatling gun. You feel this burning, almost physical itch to speak, to defend, to prove to everyone that you aren't the idiot they think you are. But here is the cold, hard truth that most people are too weak to swallow. The very second you feel that desperate urge to react, you have already handed your balls to the person across from you on a silver platter. You think your voice is your weapon, don't you? You think that having a sharp response at the tip of your tongue is what makes you powerful. But Nietzsche would look at you and see a domesticated dog barking through a fence. For him, and for anyone who actually understands the mechanics of power, true strength isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about the heavy, crushing weight of what you choose not to say. We've been lied to. We've been conditioned by a world that celebrates noise, a world of social media takes and endless mindless debates where everyone is competing to see who can have the last word. But in this sea of garbage, the ones who truly hold the keys to the kingdom are the ones who stay silent. Why is it so hard to just shut up? Because you're fighting a ghost that's been living in your DNA for 100,000 years. This is the biological leash. Back in the day, if you didn't have a voice in the tribe, you were invisible. And in the wild, being invisible meant you were the first one left behind when the tigers showed up. Silence was exile. Silence was death. So, your brain evolved to believe that being heard is the same thing as staying alive. That's why your pulse spikes when someone challenges you. Your DNA is screaming at you to justify your existence, to bark so the pack knows you're still there. But we aren't in a cave anymore. And that same reflex that saved your ancestors is now making you a slave. When you scramble to respond, when you feel you must justify your choices or your opinions, you are essentially a beggar. You are begging for validation. You are asking for someone else's permission to exist. Nietzsche saw this clearly. The urgency to speak is a confession of insignificance. It's an admission that you don't trust your own reality enough to let it stand on its own. You're reacting, and the person who reacts is always the one being controlled. Look at the way we live now. Social media has turned every conversation into a public battleground where victory is measured by volume and repetition, not by truth. We fill every empty space with words. Words we don't even believe half the time, just because we are terrified of the vacuum. We're like children whistling in the dark, hoping the noise will keep the monsters away. But the monster is just the realization that without the noise, most people have nothing inside. If you can't bear the silence of a room, it's because that silence is forcing you to look at your own emptiness. The Übermensch, Nietzsche's higher man, doesn't have this problem. He doesn't panic when he's misunderstood. He doesn't feel the need to explain his values to the herd because he creates those values himself. He understands that silence is a psychological blade. It creates a mystery that people can't categorize or predict, and the unpredictable will always be more powerful than the obvious. So when you feel that itch to speak, I want you to look at it for what it is, a leash. It's your prehistoric brain trying to pull you back into the herd. It's your insecurity begging for a like or a "you're right." If you want to be more than a puppet, you have to have the iron will to stay in the silence and watch everyone else fidget. You have to be okay with the discomfort. You have to be okay with the fact that people will think you're arrogant or bored or that you've lost the argument. Let them think it. Their need to categorize you is their weakness, not yours. By refusing to play the game, you've already won it. You are the one holding the leash now. You are the one controlling the rhythm. This is the first step toward the cathedral. It's about cutting the nerves that make you jump every time the world pokes you. If you can't master your own heartbeat in a 10-second pause, how do you expect to master anything else in this life? This is just the ground floor. If you think you've got the stomach to keep going, to actually see how deep this rabbit hole of silence goes, then stay with me. But if you're already looking for the skip button because the silence I'm talking about is making your skin crawl, then you've already proven my point. You're a reactor, a slave to the noise. For the rest of you, the ones who want to see the predator's gaze, we're just getting started. So we moved past the biology. Now we have to talk about the cage. The cage they built for you out of gold-plated words and honesty. You've been fed this poison since you were old enough to crawl, this idea that transparency is a virtue, that you need to be open, and that speaking your truth is the ultimate form of freedom. What a load of absolute garbage. Transparency is the virtue of the weak. It is the tool of the jailer. Think about it. Why does the world want you to be transparent? Because a transparent man is a predictable man, and a predictable man is a man who can be governed, categorized, and discarded when he's no longer useful. This is the domestication trap. We live in a society that has turned conversations into public battles where victory isn't achieved through truth, but through how well you fit into the narrative. Nietzsche saw right through this. He understood that the rules they taught you, the morality, the right and wrong, the social conventions, were never made to strengthen you. They were made to domesticate you. They want you to be a good boy who over-explains his grades, his career choices, and his heartbreaks, because as long as you are talking, they have a handle on your soul. They know exactly which strings to pull to make you dance. You think you're being authentic when you bleed your secrets onto a social media feed or a group chat. You aren't. You're just handing over the blueprints to your internal fortress for free. You're becoming a puppet to external validation. Every time you feel that desperate need to be heard, you are deep down seeking validation from a herd that doesn't even like itself. You are reacting to the world's pressure to be seen, and those who react are being controlled. The Übermensch, Nietzsche's ideal of absolute self-mastery, refuses this. He doesn't despair to be accepted. He doesn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. He understands that silence is his primary weapon because it preserves his mystery. Mystery is a force multiplier. If the world doesn't know what you're thinking, it cannot calculate your next move. If they can't categorize you, they can't control you. The unpredictable will always be more powerful than the obvious. But you're so scared of being insignificant that you fill every empty space with noise. You're terrified that your silence will be interpreted as submission, so you shout your position to the world. But that obsession with responding is just a confession of your own fear. It is disguised weakness. Stop and look at the masters of our modern age. They want you to be an open book so they can flip through your pages and find the exact spot where you're vulnerable. They want you to be vulnerable so they can sell you a cure for a disease they created. But the one who masters silence, he doesn't play that game. He understands that silence can be more powerful than any argument. He knows that by refusing to react at the expected moment, he forces everyone else to deal with their own anxiety. Silence generates mystery and respect. It makes people uncomfortable, and that discomfort is where you find your leverage. While everyone else is busy explaining themselves and asking for permission to exist, the silent man is building his own values. He doesn't ask for permission. He is his own judge and jury. This is the difference between a true leader and someone who needs to shout to be heard. The true leader exists so firmly and unwaveringly that his presence alone commands respect. He doesn't need to justify himself at every step. The trap is designed to make you think that silence is a void you need to fill, but silence is actually a shield you need to carry. Every time you withhold a piece of yourself, you grow stronger. Every time you let a question hang in the air without rushing to answer it, you reclaim a piece of your sovereignty. The herd hates this. They interpret your silence as arrogance or disinterest. They call it an attack. Why? Because your silence forces them to look at their own insecurity. It forces them to face the emptiness they are trying to hide with their own incessant chatter. If you want to break the chains of domestication, you have to start by being okay with being misunderstood. You have to be okay with the weight of loneliness. You have to realize that truth doesn't need applause to exist. The moment you stop needing to be understood is the moment you stop being a slave. You aren't a robot programmed to express yourself for the convenience of others. You are the owner of your voice, and more importantly, you are the owner of the silence that guards it. We are just scratching the surface of this cage. You've seen the leash, you've seen the bars, but now we need to look at the predator's eyes. We need to move from the state of the hunted, the one who is constantly over-explaining and reacting, to the state of the hunter. We are going into the third pillar. You've been the prey your whole life, and you didn't even realize it. Every time you entered a room and started babbling to make people like you, you were exposing your throat. Every time you jumped to defend yourself against some pathetic insult, you were showing the world exactly where you're soft. You were acting like a reactor, and in the wild, the one who reacts to every snap of a twig is the one who gets eaten. But we're moving past that now. We're stepping out of the cage of domestication and into the state of the hunter. We're talking about the predator's gaze. Nietzsche understood that life is a battlefield, and on this field, the warrior who charges in first, screaming and revealing his position, is usually the first to die. The real winner is the one who knows how to wait, who stays perfectly still in the tall grass, observing the enemy's every twitch until their flaws are laid bare. This isn't just about being quiet, it's about a total shift in your internal orientation. You are no longer looking for a gap in the conversation to jump in, you're looking for the cracks in the other person's mask. Think about the psychological anatomy of a talker. They are desperate for you to see them, to hear them, to validate that they matter. When they speak, they are leaking energy, they are giving you data. They are telling you what they fear, what they value, and what makes them feel small. The master of silence, on the other hand, is a black box. He is the observer. He waits, and only then does he decide if a response is even worth the effort. Stoicism calls this prososh, a state of constant, sharp attention. While the other person is busy trying to win a meaningless debate with volume and repetition, the observer is conducting a psychological autopsy in real time. You aren't just listening to their words, you're watching the way their eyes dart when they lie, the way their voice thins when they're insecure, and the way they panic when you don't give them the nod they're fishing for. This gaze disarms people. It makes them feel like they are being seen for exactly who they are, and for most people, that is a terrifying experience. Nietzsche's Übermensch doesn't need to raise his voice because his presence is so unwavering that it commands respect without a single syllable. He understands that silence is a psychological weapon that forces the other person to reveal themselves without him having to move a single muscle. When you stop reacting, you stop being a puppet. You break the strings that the world has been using to jerk you around. Most people are terrified of this because they've built their entire identity on the noise of other people's approval. But the one who can sit in that silence, watching and waiting, becomes the master of the situation. He lets his adversaries talk and talk until they get lost in their own words and reveal their deepest weaknesses. It's a game of forces, and the person who speaks less, but speaks with purpose, will never be ignored. So, next time you're in a confrontation, I want you to try something. Instead of firing back, instead of trying to prove you're right, just look at them. not with anger, but with a cold, analytical curiosity. Watch them fidget. Watch them struggle to fill the vacuum you've created. They will interpret your silence as disdain, superiority, or even an attack. Let them. Their reaction is their problem, not yours. By refusing to play the reaction game, you have effectively taken control of the rhythm of the interaction. You are the one holding the leash now. You are the owner of your voice and the master of your presence. This is the predator's gaze, the ability to see the world as it is, without the fog of your own ego getting in the way. If you can master this, you will never be seen the same way again. You will become unshakable. But there's a reason people don't do this. There's a reason people run away from the silence. It's because the silence contains a vacuum that most souls aren't strong enough to stand in. It's time we talk about the horror vacui, the primal, gut-wrenching fear of the empty space. We're going into the fourth pillar, and it's going to get much darker before we see the light. You've felt it, haven't you? That suffocating, heavy pressure that starts to build the moment the talking stops. You're sitting across from someone, maybe it's an interview, a date, or an argument, and the last sentence has just drifted away into the air. 1 second of silence, 2 seconds. By the third second, your skin starts to crawl. You feel this desperate, primal urge to throw a word, any word, into that growing hole before it swallows you whole. This is the horror vacui, the fear of the empty space. It is one of the most powerful psychological forces on the planet, and most people are its absolute slaves. They think they're talking because they have something to say, but they're actually just talking because they're terrified of what happens when they don't. They're terrified of the vacuum. But for the master, the vacuum isn't a threat. It's a laboratory. It's a torture chamber where the other person's ego goes to die. If you can learn to sit in that void without flinching, you aren't just being quiet. You are exerting a level of dominance that most people can't even comprehend. Why does the silence hurt so much? Because when the noise stops, the distraction stops. When you aren't talking, you are forced to be present. And for the average domesticated human, presence is a nightmare. Nietzsche famously warned us, "And if thou gaze long into an abyss, the abyss will also gaze into thee." That's exactly what a pause in conversation is. It's a mini-abyss. It's a moment where the social masks drop, and you're forced to look at the person across from you and yourself without the fog of words to hide behind. Most people are hollow men. They have built their entire identity on the noise of other people's approval, on the scripts they've been handed by society. When the script stops, they realize there's nothing underneath. They rot in the face of the void because they have no internal citadel, as the Stoics called it. They have no core, so they babble. They make jokes. They apologize for things they didn't do. They reveal their secrets, their fears, and their plans just to get you to start making noise again. They are essentially begging you to help them hide from themselves. This is where the tactical mastery comes in. If you can master the horror vacui, you can win almost any negotiation or conflict before it even starts. Think about the mechanics of a high-stakes conversation. Most people are so eager to fill the gap that they'll offer concessions they didn't need to make. They'll lower their price. They'll admit they were wrong. They'll give away their leverage, all just to end the awkward silence. They think the silence is an attack from you, but it's actually an attack from their own nervous system. By staying perfectly still, by keeping your expression neutral and your mouth shut, you are letting their own brain do the work for you. You are a mirror, and they are drowning in their own reflection. This is the ultimate smart engagement with reality. You aren't forcing them to do anything. You are simply providing the empty space and watching as they dismantle their own dignity to fill it. It's a brutal, cold-blooded way to navigate the world, but if you want to be an Ubermensch, you have to be comfortable with the cold. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, understood that your internal state should be like a rock in the middle of a crashing sea. The waves hit it, the wind howls around it, but the rock stays. Most people are the opposite. They are the spray, the foam, the noise. They are moved by every ripple in the social environment. If you want to build your intellectual cathedral, you have to start by making your internal world so dense, so full, that external silence doesn't feel like a vacuum. It feels like home. When you reach that state, you realize that words are just a cheap currency used by people who are bankrupt on the inside. You stop leaking your spirit through your mouth. You start treating every word like a precious resource, something to be spent only when the return on investment is guaranteed. Until then, you let the void do the talking. You let the other person struggle and sweat in the silence you've provided for them. Let's be honest, are you the one who breaks first? Do you find yourself making small talk with the cashier or the person in the elevator just because you can't handle the 3-second walk in silence? If you do, you're still a slave. You're still a reactor. You're still terrified of the abyss. But if you can walk into a room, say what needs to be said, and then let the silence hang there like a heavy fog until the other person starts to choke on it, then you've found the fourth pillar. You've mastered the horror vacui. You've learned that the vacuum isn't empty, it's full of your presence, and that presence is the most terrifying thing a weak person will ever encounter. Now, don't just listen to this and go back to your noisy, pathetic life. This is a loyalty test for the elite who are actually listening. For the next 3 days, I want you to intentionally create voids. In every conversation, once you've finished your point, stop. Don't add, you know, or does that make sense? Just stop. Look them in the eye and let the silence sit there. Count to 5 in your head. Watch the exact moment their pupils dilate and they start to scramble for a response. That moment of scramble, that's the sound of their ego collapsing. That's the sound of you winning. If you have the guts to do this, you'll realize that the void isn't your enemy, it's your throne. We've looked into the abyss and we've survived. But now it's time to take that abyss and turn it back on the world. We're moving into the fifth pillar, where we stop just observing the vacuum and start using it as a precision weapon. We are moving into the mirror strategy. So you think you're being clever when you argue. You think that by presenting a logical, well-structured defense, you're actually winning. You're not. You're just providing the enemy with more ammunition. You're giving them a target to aim at. But what happens when you stop providing a target? What happens when you become a mirror? This is the fifth pillar, the mirror strategy, and it is the most lethal psychological tool in your arsenal. When you're a mirror, you don't fight, you don't defend, and you certainly don't explain. You just reflect. You stand there, wrapped in a cold, impenetrable silence, and you let the other person's words bounce off of you and hit them right back in the face. It is a psychological labyrinth that you don't even have to build. The other person builds it for themselves using their own insecurity as the bricks and their own words as the mortar. They start out attacking you, but because you give them nothing back, they end up attacking the only thing left in the room, their own reflection. Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you. Maybe they were insulting your work, or your character, or your choices. Their ego was feeding on the anticipation of your reaction. They wanted to see you get defensive. They wanted to see you sweat. Why? Because as long as you are reacting, they are the one in control. They are the puppet master, and your emotions are the strings. But when you look them in the eye and say, absolutely nothing, the strings go limp. The mirror starts to work. They see their own anger reflected in your calm. They see their own desperation reflected in your silence, and that is when the panic sets in. Their brain starts to short-circuit because the script of social interaction has been ripped up. They expected a fight, but they found a void. And because they can't stand the vacuum we talked about in the last pillar, they start to fill it with more words. They start to apologize, or they start to double down with even more ridiculous insults, or they start to explain themselves to you. They are looking for a door out of the labyrinth they've just walked into, but every turn they take leads them right back to their own reflection. They are drowning in their own verbal diarrhea, and you are just standing on the shore, watching them sink. Nietzsche understood this better than anyone. He knew that the vast majority of human interaction is just a series of ego games. People aren't looking for truth. They're looking for a mirror that tells them they're powerful. When you refuse to be that mirror, when you choose to be a mirror that reflects their own ugliness instead, you are committing an act of spiritual warfare. You are forcing them to confront the shadow that Jung talked about, the part of themselves they spend their whole lives trying to hide. Most people are terrified of who they are when no one is clapping for them. By staying silent, you strip away their audience. You leave them alone with their own noise. It's like a psychological hall of mirrors. Everywhere they look, they see another version of their own weakness. They see their own need for validation, their own fear of being ignored, and their own inability to control their impulses. And the best part, you didn't do a damn thing. You just stayed still. You followed the Stoic principle of remaining an unshakable rock. The sea can pound against the rock all it wants, but the rock doesn't care. It just stays. This is how you dismantle an opponent without ever raising your voice. You let them defeat themselves. You let them reveal their secrets, their fears, and their flaws because they can't handle the pressure of your silence. They think they're winning because they're doing all the talking, but in reality, they're just digging their own grave. Every word they speak is another shovel full of dirt. By the time they realize what's happening, they're 6 feet deep in their own insecurity, and you're still standing there, perfectly intact. This is the mirror strategy in its purest form. It is the ultimate expression of the predator's gaze. You aren't just observing them, you are reflecting them until they can't stand the sight of themselves anymore. It takes an incredible amount of internal strength to do this. It requires you to kill your own ego first. You have to be okay with the fact that in the short term, you might look like the one who lost the argument. But you didn't lose. You just stayed in the game longer than they did. You stayed in the silence until they cracked. So, here is your loyalty test, your psychological challenge for this pillar. The next time someone tries to bait you into an argument, and it will happen today or tomorrow, I want you to become the mirror. I want you to look them dead in the eye, keep your face like a mask of stone, and don't say a single word. Not okay, not I disagree, nothing. Let them talk until they run out of breath. Let them talk until the silence starts to feel like a physical weight in the room. And when they finally ask you, "What? You have nothing to say?" Stay silent for 3 more seconds, then simply turn around and walk away. That silence will haunt them for the rest of the week. They will replay that moment in their head 1,000 times, trying to figure out what you were thinking. They will build a labyrinth of doubt in their own mind, and they will never find the exit. You've already moved on. You've already found your internal citadel. You are the master of the mirror. Look at you. You're still twitching every time someone misinterprets your intentions, aren't you? You still feel that pathetic, burning need to set the record straight when some nobody doesn't understand your genius or your choices. You think you're being honest or transparent by over-explaining your life, but you're actually just a beggar in a suit. Every time you open your mouth to justify why you did what you did, you are handing over a piece of your soul and asking for a stamp of approval from someone who probably isn't even worth your time. Nietzsche understood that the vast majority of people are effectively chained to the illusions of the herd. They believe that being understood is some kind of noble goal, but in reality, the desperate desire to be understood is a form of dependency. It's a leash. If your peace of mind depends on some random person getting your perspective, then that person owns you. You're essentially asking for permission to exist, for permission to have an opinion, for permission to breathe. But the Übermensch? He doesn't ask for a damn thing. He doesn't explain his moves like a character in a bad movie. He creates his own values, sets his own pace, and moves forward regardless of whether the crowd is cheering or throwing stones. We need to perform a radical surgery on your spirit right now. We are talking about the death of validation. This is the moment you realize that the umbilical cord connecting your happiness to the nod of the crowd has to be cut, and it's going to bleed. Most of you are absolutely terrified of being the villain in someone else's story. You're so desperate to be seen as the good guy that you'll vomit out thousands of words just to fix a minor misunderstanding with someone who has the IQ of a doorstop. This incessant chatter isn't communication, it's a confession of insecurity. It's a desperate attempt to avoid the terror of being insignificant or, God forbid, disliked. But the truth, the cold, hard, stoic truth, is that truth does not need a single person to clap for it to exist. A mountain doesn't explain its height to the hiker. A storm doesn't justify its destruction to the trees. It just is. If you want to achieve true strength, you have to find that cold, internal citadel within yourself where other people's opinions go to die. You have to be okay with the heavy, awkward silence of being misunderstood. You have to be strong enough to bear the weight of loneliness that comes with being an original, because the moment you stop needing the world to validate you, you become unshakable. You become a threat to the system because you no longer play the game of seeking constant acceptance. Think about all the vital energy you've leaked over the years, trying to convince people who were never going to change their minds anyway. How many words have you thrown into the trash just because you couldn't handle the 3-second vacuum of a pause in a conversation? This is psychological slavery. Every like, every "I see your point," every "you're right" is a hit of dopamine that keeps you addicted to the herd. You've been programmed to be a pleaser, a negotiator, someone who bridges the gap. But Nietzsche would tell you that the gap is where your power lives. The gap is the distance between you and the mediocre masses. Those who talk all the time are always reacting to the world, always trying to justify their existence like a defendant in a courtroom where the jury is made of idiots. But the master? He understands that the absence of words can carry more weight than 1,000 speeches. He knows that his strength does not lie in how many arguments he wins, but in the silent, gravitational impact of his presence. He doesn't wear himself out trying to prove his intelligence or his status to anyone. He exists so firmly and unwaveringly that he commands respect without saying a single word. Imagine the freedom of being the bad guy in someone's mind and not feeling the need to fix it. Imagine someone calling you arrogant or cold or wrong, and you just look at them. You don't argue, you don't explain, you don't try to show them your perspective. You just let their opinion sit there like a piece of garbage on the sidewalk. You don't pick it up, you don't even acknowledge it. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he talked about the internal citadel. It's a fortress inside your mind where you retreat when the world starts throwing its stones. Inside that fortress, you are the king. Outside, the opinions of the people are just wind. Does a king argue with the wind? No, he just waits for it to pass. By seeking validation, you are opening the gates of your fortress and inviting the enemy to come in and rearrange the furniture. You are letting them tell you who you are. But when you kill that need, the gates stay shut. You become a black box, unpredictable, unreadable, and utterly sovereign. The world hates this. It hates the man who doesn't explain himself because it can't find a handle on him. If I can't make you feel guilty, I can't control you. If I can't make you feel wrong, I can't make you change. Silence is the ultimate no to the world's demands. It's a declaration that your internal compass is the only one that matters. This requires a level of grit that most people will never have. It means being okay with being the silent villain. It means accepting that people will talk behind your back, that they will make up lies about you, and that they will hate you for the simple fact that they can't break you. Nietzsche saw the herd as a collective that finds comfort in noise because they cannot stand the silence of their own mediocrity. They need you to talk so they can feel like you're one of them. When you stay silent, you are reminding them that you aren't. And that is the greatest insult you can ever give to a weak person. So here is your psychological challenge, your loyalty test for the elite who actually want power over their own lives. For the next 24 hours, I want you to stop explaining yourself. Stop it completely. When someone disagrees with you, stay silent. When someone misinterprets your actions or your character, let them. Don't correct them. Don't justify. Don't try to bridge the gap. Just sit in the discomfort of their misunderstanding and watch what it does to them. And more importantly, watch what it does to the fire inside of you. If you can't do it, if you feel that itch to speak so badly that your skin crawls, then you know exactly how much of a slave you still are. You're not in control of your voice. Your insecurity is, but if you can master this, if you can face the weight of your own silence without blinking, you will realize that you don't need the recognition of others to exist. You are the owner of your silence, and in that silence, you are finally, for the first time in your life, free. You have killed the need for validation. You have buried the beggar. Now, you can finally start to lead. Look at what's left of you after we've stripped away the noise, the biological barks, and the pathetic begging for a good job. You're standing there in the cold, and for the first time, you're realizing that the space inside your head isn't just a container for other people's trash. It's meant to be a fortress. This is the seventh pillar, the internal citadel. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations for an audience. He wrote them for himself in the mud of a war zone as a way to keep his soul from leaking into the chaos. He knew that if you don't build walls inside your mind, the world will treat you like an open field, trampling over your peace, shitting on your values, and leaving you to rot in the rain of their opinions. Most of you are living in a state of spiritual homelessness. You react to every headline, every insult, and every trend because you have no place to retreat to. You have no center. You are just a collection of reactions held together by a thin layer of skin. But the master builds a cathedral of stone in the center of his own consciousness, and silence is the mortar that holds every block in place. Every time you choose not to speak, every time you swallow a reaction and let it dissolve into the quiet, you are adding a layer of armor to this citadel. Think of your energy as a finite resource. When you talk, you are bleeding. When you explain yourself, you are leaking. Most people are essentially walking around with giant holes in their spirit, losing their power to anyone who knows how to trigger them. But the Stoic discipline of the internal citadel is about becoming a closed system. It's about reaching a state where the external world can scream, burn, and collapse, but the space behind your eyes remains perfectly still. Nietzsche took this even further. He didn't just want a fortress. He wanted a throne room. He wanted you to be the one who creates the values that fill that space. If you don't have this internal structure, you aren't a person. You're just a conduit for the herd's garbage. You're a vessel for their anger, their fears, and their mediocre dreams. Building the citadel means becoming your own source of gravity. It means reaching a point where you don't need the world to be right for you to be okay. Building this isn't about peace and love or some soft meditation retreat. It's about war. It's about the brutal daily practice of saying no to the world's demands on your attention. It means when someone tries to pull you into a useless debate, you look at them and realize they aren't even real to you. They are just another external phenomenon, no more significant than a gust of wind or a barking dog. Do you get angry at the wind? No, you just close the window. That window is your silence. The citadel is the only place where you are truly free, because it's the only place where the world's rewards and punishments don't reach. If they can't make you happy with their praise, they can't make you miserable with their hate. You become an island of apatheia, not the modern apathy of being a lazy loser, but the ancient freedom from passion where your reason is the only king. Most of you are terrified of this kind of isolation. You've been told that man is a social animal, which is just a fancy way of saying you're a slave to the pack. But the Ubermensch is the one who can stand on the mountain alone and not feel small. Imagine the sheer, terrifying power of a man who cannot be bribed by attention. That is the citizen of the internal citadel. While everyone else is scurrying around, trying to build their identity out of the shifting sands of social status, you are building yours out of the iron of your own character. You stop being a reactor and start being an actor. You move through the world, but you aren't of it. When you speak, it's because you've decided to open the gates of your fortress, not because someone outside is banging on them. This creates a level of presence that is almost supernatural. People can sense when someone has an internal world that is more real than the external one. It draws them in, it frightens them, and it commands a respect that no amount of shouting could ever buy. They see that you don't need them, and in their own insecurity, they start to need you. They want to know what's inside those walls. They want to know how you can be so calm while they are drowning. But you don't tell them. You just give them the silence they deserve. This is the hardest work you will ever do. It requires you to sit with your own boredom, your own anxiety, and your own darkness until they no longer have power over you. Most people talk to drown out the sound of their own souls screaming in the void. They need the noise to distract them from the fact that they have no idea who they are. But inside the citadel, you face that void. You embrace it. You realize that the void isn't an enemy. It's the space where you build your own divinity. Every moment of silence you endure is a brick. Every provocation you ignore is a wall. Every time you refuse to be understood by a fool, you are digging the moat deeper. This is why silence is so essential. You cannot build a fortress while you're constantly leaking information to the enemy. You have to shut the gates. You have to stop being transparent. You have to become a mystery even to yourself, discovering layers of strength you didn't know existed because you were too busy talking over them. So here is your loyalty test for the elite who are still standing. For the next 3 days, I want you to treat your mind like a restricted zone. Don't let anything in that doesn't serve your growth. No mindless scrolling. No checking the news to see what the herd is angry about today. And absolutely no over-explaining your thoughts to anyone. When someone asks you, "What are you thinking?" give them a small smile and say nothing. Let them wonder. Your thoughts are the treasure inside your citadel. Don't throw them like pearls before swine. If you can do this, you'll feel a weight beginning to settle in your chest. A heavy, solid weight of self-reliance. That is the first stone of your citadel being laid. You're no longer a leaf in the wind. You're becoming the mountain. And the mountain doesn't need to explain itself to the clouds. Look at the people around you. They are open books with big, dumb neon signs pointing to their every weakness. You know exactly what makes them angry. You know what makes them sad. And you know exactly what they're going to say before they even open their mouths. They are known quantities. In the world of power, being a known quantity is a death sentence. This is the 8th pillar, the Blackbox protocol. In engineering, a black box is a system where you can see what goes in and what comes out, but the internal logic, the why and the how, is completely hidden. This is exactly how you need to interface with the world. Most of you are living as glass boxes. You're so obsessed with being relatable and authentic that you've made yourself entirely transparent. And when you are transparent, you are easy to map. If I can map your reactions, I can predict your future. If I can predict your future, I own you. Nietzsche understood that every profound spirit needs a mask. He knew that the higher man doesn't reveal himself to the herd, because the herd would only use that information to drag him back down to their level. Think about the psychological advantage of being a ghost in the machine. When you stop being predictable, you stop being a target. We live in an age of data. Algorithms are literally designed to predict your next click, your next purchase, your next emotional outburst, and you're giving it to them for free every single day. You post your takes, you share your moods, and you explain your journey. You think you're building a brand, but you're actually just building your own cage. The Blackbox protocol is about cutting the data feed. It's about becoming an enigma. When you enter a room and you don't immediately reveal your position, you force everyone else into a state of high alert observation. They can't categorize you. Are you an ally, an enemy, a genius, a fool? They don't know, and because they don't know, they can't form a strategy against you. Mystery is a force multiplier. It creates a vacuum of information that other people fill with their own fears and projections. They start treating you with a level of caution and respect that they never show to the transparent guy who tells everyone his life story in the first 5 minutes. The Stoics taught us that we should be indifferent to things outside our control, but they also knew the value of discretion. Epictetus warned against talking about your philosophy. He said to show it through your actions. Don't tell people you're disciplined, just be disciplined and let them wonder how you do it. The Blackbox protocol takes this to a tactical extreme. It's about the unpredictability of the master. If you always react with anger when you're insulted, you're a glass box. If you always laugh it off, you're a glass box. But if sometimes you stay silent, sometimes you smile, and sometimes you simply walk away without a word, now you're a black box. You've broken the pattern. People hate patterns they can't recognize because it reminds them of their own lack of control. By being unpredictable, you are asserting your sovereignty. You are saying that your internal logic is your own, and the world doesn't get a vote in how you process reality. This isn't about being a liar. It's about being a gatekeeper. You are the only person on this planet who should have the full map of your soul. Everyone else gets a need-to-know basis. When you're at work, when you're in a negotiation, or even in your personal life, ask yourself, does this person need to see inside the box right now? Usually the answer is no. Most of our talking is just a pattern-confirming noise. We say what people expect us to say so they feel comfortable. But why the hell do you care about their comfort? Their comfort is the cushion they use while they're sitting on your potential. Stop making it easy for them. Let them sweat in the uncertainty of who you really are. Let them wonder if you're planning something big or if you're just enjoying the quiet. The more they wonder, the more power you have. Information is the currency of the 21st century, and you're currently throwing your money in the street like a madman. Nietzsche's concept of the mask wasn't about deception, it was about protection. The higher man is too complex, too profound for the average person to understand. If you try to explain yourself to the herd, they will only misunderstand you and hate you for it. So, you give them a mask. You give them a black box. You let them see the output, the success, the strength, the results, but you never show them the struggle or the internal mechanics. This preserves your dignity and your energy. It allows you to build your internal citadel without the neighbors trying to tell you how to paint the walls. You become a closed system. You stop being a consumer of social validation and start being a producer of your own reality. Every time you refuse to vent your frustrations or share your plans, you are tightening the seal on your box. You are becoming a concentrated force rather than a scattered noise. So here is your psychological challenge, your test of loyalty to your own sovereignty. For the next 48 hours, I want you to be the black box. If someone asks you a question that probes into your internal logic or your future plans, give them the most minimalist, non-committal answer possible. Don't be rude, be a mystery. If someone tries to bait an emotional reaction out of you, give them an output they didn't predict. If they expect anger, give them a calm, silent stare. If they expect an apology, give them a question. Watch how the power dynamic shifts the moment they realize their map of you is useless. They will try to poke and prod to get a reaction, to find a crack in the box. Don't let them. Hold the seal. Realize that every secret you keep is a piece of power you retain. You aren't a public utility, you are a private fortress. It's time you started acting like one. You think your voice is a gift. You think that because you have a tongue and an internet connection, you are obligated to spend your verbal currency like a drunken sailor in a port town. But let's look at the economics of your soul. Why is gold valuable? Because there isn't much of it. Why is the air you breathe free? Because it's everywhere. Currently, your words are like air, abundant, invisible, and completely worthless. This is the ninth pillar, the law of rarity. In a world that is drowning in a literal sea of content, takes, and opinions, the most valuable thing you can possess is the ability to withhold. Most people are living in a state of hyperinflation. They talk so much that their words have lost all their purchasing power. When they open their mouths, people don't listen. They just wait for the noise to stop so they can start making their own noise. But the master treats every syllable like a precision-guided missile. He understands that the more he says, the less people remember. But when the man who is usually silent finally decides to speak, the entire room shifts its gravity. People stop breathing. They lean in, because they know that whatever is about to come out of that mouth isn't small talk. It's a decree. Nietzsche was the master of the aphorism, the short, punchy sentence that contains more truth than a 1,000-page textbook. He didn't want to explain things to you. He wanted to hit you in the face with a realization. He understood that it is my ambition to say in 10 sentences what everyone else says in a book, what everyone else does not say in a book. This is the level of impact you should be aiming for. If you can't say it in 5 words, you don't understand it well enough to say it at all. Every and like you use is a leak in your power. Every time you repeat yourself to make sure they got it, you are telling the world that you don't think your words are strong enough to stand on their own. You're essentially begging for attention. But when you apply the law of rarity, you transform your speech from a cheap commodity into a luxury good. You become the stone thrown into a calm lake. One ripple, one impact, and then the silence returns, heavier than before. Think about the Stoic masters. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, famously said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we speak." This wasn't just cute advice for children. It was a tactical manual for survival. The more you listen, the more you learn about the other person's black box. The less you speak, the less they know about yours. When you finally do speak, you aren't guessing. You're hitting exactly where it hurts or where it matters. You've seen the office talker, haven't you? The guy who has a comment for every meeting, every lunch, and every email thread. Does anyone respect him? No. They tolerate him. They manage him. Now, think about the person who sits in the back of the room, says nothing for 45 minutes, and then drops one sentence that completely changes the direction of the project. That is the law of rarity in action. That person isn't smarter because of their IQ. They are more powerful because of their discipline. They've let everyone else exhaust their cheap currency while they were minting gold in the silence. This pillar requires you to become a minimalist of the soul. You have to stop being a broadcaster and start being a surgeon. A surgeon doesn't hack away at a body with a chainsaw. He makes 1, 2, or 3 precise incisions. That is how you should handle your social interactions. Before you speak, I want you to ask yourself, is what I am about to say better than the silence I am about to break? If the answer is no, then, for the love of your own sovereignty, keep your mouth shut. The herd will try to bait you. They will ask you, what do you think, about things that don't matter, politics, celebrities, the weather. They are trying to pull you into the inflation. They want to make you as common as they are. Don't let them. Give them a one-word answer. Give them a nod. Give them a look that says you're thinking about things 10 levels deeper than their pathetic question. The more you withhold, the more people will start to project wisdom onto you. It's a psychological trick of the human brain. We fill the unknown with our own highest expectations. The weight of your words is directly proportional to the amount of silence that precedes them. If you talk for an hour, your last sentence is lighter than a feather. If you stay silent for an hour, your first word is heavier than a mountain. This is how you change the climate of your life. You stop being a reactor who responds to every ping on your phone or every insult in the street. You become a creator who only speaks when the world is ready to be reshaped. Nietzsche's Zarathustra didn't come down from the mountain to have chats with the villagers. He came to deliver fire. If you aren't delivering fire, stay on the mountain. If you aren't providing a heavy stone, don't throw anything at all. The world is already full of pebbles. Don't add to the pile. Master the law of rarity, and you will find that you don't need to shout to be the loudest person in the room. Your silence will do the screaming for you. So, here is your loyalty test. For the rest of this day, I want you to treat your words like they cost you $1,000 each. If you want to say something, you have to be willing to pay for it with your own vital energy. You'll find that 99% of what you are going to say isn't worth a dime. Keep the money. Stay rich in the silence. Watch how people start to look at you differently when they realize they can't buy your opinion for the price of a cheap question. You aren't a public utility. You are a rare, precious metal. It's time you started acting like it. Look at your phone. Go ahead. Look at it. It's a slot machine designed by the smartest psychologists on the planet to turn your brain into a pile of mush. It's vibrating, it's pinging, it's practically screaming at you to join the conversation. There's a new outrage every 6 hours, a new hero to worship, and a new villain to burn at the stake. And the machine demands that you participate. It demands your take. It demands your outrage. It demands that you be present in the digital herd, bleating along with everyone else so it can harvest your attention and sell it to the highest bidder. This is the world we live in, a parasitic attention economy that treats your soul like a battery. But here is the 10th pillar, the rebellion of absence. In a world where everyone is fighting to be seen, the most radical, aggressive act of war you can commit is to be invisible. Silence is no longer just a personal choice. It is a systemic assault. When you refuse to react, when you choose to be absent from the noise, you aren't just missing out. You are breaking the algorithm. You are becoming a glitch that the machine cannot categorize, monetize, or control. Nietzsche talked about the taming of man. He saw a future where everyone would be reduced to a clever animal that lives for comfort and the approval of the herd. He called them the last men, beings who have lost the ability to dream, to struggle, and to stand alone. They find comfort in the collective noise because the noise tells them they are right, they are safe, and they are part of something. But the Übermensch is the one who steps out of the circus entirely. Every time you withhold a comment on a trending topic, every time you ignore a provocation on a screen, you are reclaiming a piece of your humanity that the machine is trying to steal. The herd hates this. They see your absence as a threat. Why aren't you angry about what I'm angry about? Why aren't you celebrating what I'm celebrating? They need your participation to validate their own shallow existence. When you give them your absence instead, you are holding up a mirror to their own slavery. You are showing them that it is possible to exist without the digital umbilical cord. You are committing an act of rebellion that is far more powerful than any protest or any speech. You are becoming a sovereign individual in a world of domesticated ghosts. Think about the psychological mechanics of the outrage cycle. It depends entirely on reaction. It needs a pro and a con. It needs a left and a right. It needs a victim and a villain. As long as you are playing one of those roles, you are fueling the fire. You are part of the engine. But when you are absent, the engine sputters. Your silence is a no that vibrates through the entire system. It's like the Stoic concept of ascesis, the practice of self-discipline and voluntary hardship. Except today, the hardship isn't fasting or sleeping on the ground. It's the hardship of not having an opinion. It's the hardship of being okay with people thinking you're out of the loop or uninformed. Most of you are so terrified of being seen as uninformed that you'll swallow any garbage the news feeds you just so you can regurgitate it at a dinner party. You're essentially a human sewer pipe for information you didn't even ask for. The rebellion of absence is about shutting the valve. It's about realizing that 99.9% of the things the world is screaming about have absolutely zero impact on your internal citadel. Why are you giving your vital energy to things that will be forgotten by next Tuesday? Every time you choose to stay in the silence while the world is losing its mind, you are concentrating your power. While the herd is scattering their energy like dust in the wind, you are building a reservoir. This is the absence of the predator. A lion doesn't announce its presence with a constant roar. It stays silent, invisible, and focused until the moment it chooses to strike. The modern world is full of loud prey. People who think that by making noise they are exerting power. But noise is a leak. Noise is a confession of transparency. Your absence creates a vacuum that forces the world to wonder about you. It creates a gravitational pull. People who are always there, always on, and always available are cheap. They are common. But the one who is absent, the one who is hard to find and impossible to predict, that person becomes a myth. That person becomes a legend. You aren't just not talking. You are asserting your right to be a mystery in a world that demands you be a data point. So, here is your loyalty test, your act of rebellion for the next 48 hours. I want you to ghost the world. No social media, no news, no checking in on what the herd is upset about. If someone brings up a trending topic, look them in the eye and say, I have no opinion on that. Watch the look of pure, unadulterated confusion on their face. They won't know how to process it. To them, not having an opinion is like not having a pulse. But for you, it is the first breath of real freedom. You are reclaiming your attention. You are withdrawing your energy from the parasitic machine. You are realizing that your life is what happens in the silence, not in the comments section. If you can't do this, if you feel the FOMO, fear of missing out, starting to itch after 3 hours, then you are still owned. You are still a battery. But if you can stay in the absence, if you can find the joy in being invisible, then you have joined the rebellion. You are becoming a master of the void. Look at the way you walk into a room. Most of you enter a space like a leaking bag of flour, leaving a trail of nervous energy, forced smiles, and desperate glances behind you. You think that by engaging and being friendly, you're showing confidence, but you're actually just announcing your status as a peasant. You're performing. You're scanning the room for a host or a leader to give you the nod that says you're allowed to be there. This is the opposite of power. This is the 11th pillar, sovereignty without speech. We are talking about the physics of presence, the rare, terrifying ability to command an entire environment through the sheer weight of your existence without ever needing to open your mouth. Nietzsche talked about the will to power not as a desire to boss people around, but as an internal pressure that radiates outward. When you have mastered your internal citadel, your presence stops being a request and starts being a decree. You don't need to speak to be the most important person in the room. You just need to be the person who is most there. Think about the mechanics of a heavy object. A massive star doesn't have to shout at the planets to make them orbit. Its density simply warps the space around it. That is what sovereignty feels like in a human being. It is a density of soul. Most people are light. They are easily moved, easily distracted, and easily rattled. If someone makes a joke at their expense, they twitch. If the room goes quiet, they fidget. They are like leaves in a storm, constantly reacting to the weather of the social environment. But the sovereign individual is the storm. He has a stillness that is active, not passive. This is the apathy of the Stoics. Not a lack of feeling, but a lack of being moved by the pathetic whims of others. When you walk into a space and you don't immediately look for someone to talk to, when you don't rush to fill the silence, you are asserting that your own company is enough. You are saying, I am the center of my own universe, and your presence is secondary to my own. This realization is so rare in our hypersocial, domesticated world that it hits people like a physical blow. Have you ever noticed that the person with the highest status in a group is almost always the one who moves the least? The king sits on the throne while the servants scurry around him. The predator sits perfectly still in the grass, while the prey animals are a frantic mess of twitching ears and scanning eyes. Stillness is the ultimate flex. Every unnecessary movement you make, adjusting your tie, checking your phone, shifting your weight from foot to foot, is a leak. It's a confession that you aren't comfortable in your own skin. It's a sign that you are reacting to the horror vacui we talked about earlier. But when you move with deliberation, or better yet, when you stay perfectly still, you are projecting an aura of absolute certainty. You are the unshakable rock that the waves of other people's anxieties break against. Nietzsche's Zarathustra didn't need to explain his divinity. He carried it in his stride and his silence. People could feel the weight of his spirit before he ever opened his mouth to deliver his fire. Let's talk about the gaze, not the staring contest of a child, but the steady, unblinking look of someone who has nothing to hide and nothing to prove. When you look at someone and you don't feel the need to look away first, you're engaging in a battle of wills that is won in the silence. Most people look away because they can't handle the predator's gaze. They feel like they're being seen for the hollow shells they are. But the sovereign individual can bear the gaze of the world because his validation comes from within his internal citadel. He doesn't need you to look at him with approval. He is busy observing you to see where you're soft. This isn't about being a tough guy. It's about being a real guy. It's about being so grounded in your own reality that the reality of the herd feels like a thin, pathetic hallucination. This is how the Roman senators of old could face down an invading army just by sitting in their chairs with dignity. They didn't need to fight. Their presence was the battle. If you want to master this, you have to kill the performer inside of you. You have to stop treating every social interaction like an audition. You have to reach a state where you are so full of your own purpose, so dense with your own will to power, that the opinions of the people around you are no more significant than the buzzing of flies. This requires a brutal level of self-honesty. You have to ask yourself, why am I moving right now? Why am I smiling? Is it because I want to, or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't? Most of your social graces are just survival mechanisms for a domesticated animal. True sovereignty is the ability to drop the act and just be. To exist in a room with the same heavy, unbothered presence as a mountain. When you do this, the Blackbox protocol becomes your natural state. You aren't trying to be a mystery. You are a mystery because you aren't providing the usual data points of reaction and submission. So, here is your loyalty test, your psychological challenge for this pillar of sovereignty. The next time you walk into a room, whether it's a cafe, an office, or a party, I want you to perform a silent takeover. Do not speak to anyone for the first 10 minutes. Do not check your phone. Do not look for someone you know. Just find a place to stand or sit and be perfectly still. Observe the room, feel the weight of your own presence. Watch how the people around you start to react to your silence. Watch how they fidget, how they look at you, and then quickly look away, how they start talking louder just to fill the vacuum you're creating. You are the only stationary object in a room of spinning tops. You are the one holding the leash of the environment. If you can stay in that stillness without feeling the need to explain yourself or justify your presence, then you've found the 11th pillar. You've realized that your voice is your least important tool, your presence is the hammer. So you've made it to the summit. You've climbed through the biology, the domestication, the mirrors, and the fortresses. Most people, the ones who clicked away 10 pillars ago, are currently back in the valley, frantically refreshing their feeds, arguing with strangers, and leaking their souls through their mouths like cheap faucets. They are addicted to the hit. They are terrified of the quiet, but you're standing here in the cold, thin air of the heights, and for the first time you can hear the sound of your own heartbeat without the interference of the world's garbage. This is the 12th and final pillar, the final integration. This is where the tactics end and the being begins. You aren't using silence anymore, you are the silence. You have reached the state of the Übermensch, where the silence of the world isn't a threat you have to manage, it's the throne you sit on. You have become a law unto yourself. Think about the sheer, terrifying transformation you've undergone. You started as a reactor, a biological puppet, jerking every time the world pulled the strings of your insecurity. Now, you are the observer. You see the strings, you see the puppets, and you see the pathetic little masters trying to pull them, and you just smile. That smile is the mark of the final integration. It's the realization that 99% of what people call life, the debates, the social status, the takes, the honesty, is just a giant, noisy game of hide and seek where everyone is trying to hide from the void. But you've lived in the void. You've mastered the horror vacui. You've realized that the vacuum isn't empty, it's where your real power lives. Nietzsche's Zarathustra didn't go back to the people because he needed them. He went back because he was overflowing with his own light. That's the goal. To be so full of your own internal citadel that you don't need anyone to see you, hear you, or understand you to know that you are a god in your own right. Integration means that you no longer have to remember the rules. You don't have to try to stay silent in an argument. Your nervous system has been rewired to find the silence more comfortable than the noise. You've realized that your rare words are the only ones that actually change the world. You've accepted the rebellion of absence as your natural habitat. You move through the world like a ghost in the machine. You see everything, you hear everything, but you reveal nothing that doesn't serve your purpose. This is what it means to be a black box of sovereignty. While the herd is busy being transparent and relatable, you are busy being impactful. You have moved from the marketplace where opinions are traded like cheap trinkets to the mountaintop where values are forged in the fire of solitude. But don't get it twisted. This isn't a happy ending. This is a heavy, lonely, and brutal way to live. The world will never forgive you for your silence. They will call you cold. They will call you arrogant. They will call you a monster. And your final test, the ultimate loyalty test for the elite, is to look at all that hate and all that misunderstanding and feel absolutely nothing. To stay in your citadel and watch the storm rage outside without even thinking about closing the windows. Most of you will fail this. You'll get lonely. You'll want a hit of validation. You'll want to explain to someone how deep you are now. And the moment you do, the cathedral collapses. The leash snaps back onto your neck. But for the few, the very few who can bear the weight of their own divinity, the rewards are beyond anything the herd can imagine. You become unshakable. You become the one who defines reality rather than the one who is defined by it. So, here is your final decree. The script is over. The video is finished. But the work? The work starts the moment you walk away from this. For the rest of your life, I want you to treat your silence as your most sacred possession. Guard it like a dragon guards its gold. Don't waste it on fools. Don't leak it for attention. Don't give it away for free. When you speak, speak with the weight of a mountain. When you stay silent, stay with the presence of a predator. You are no longer a part of the noise. You are the stillness that the noise is afraid of. You have integrated the 12 pillars. You are the master of the void. Now, go out into that noisy, pathetic, beautiful world and show them exactly how heavy a silent man can be. Don't say goodbye. Just leave.